Hey everyone, hope you're having a great weekend. Before we get into the topic for today, I do want you to like the video, subscribe to the channel if you're not subscribed yet, hit the bell for notifications, and if you're not getting the notifications, even if you are clicking on that bell, consider subscribing to me on BitChute, where I typically load the videos every single day, upload them the same day that I upload the the YouTube videos. I'm not on Facebook video. Anyway, so apart from that, I am going to be doing a few more live streams. There's going to be a live stream hopefully today at 2 with Memes of Destruction, who is another YouTuber from the Mad Dodge circle of people. Anyway, a story that has gone a little bit under the radar for this channel just because of time constraints, but we're going to address it simply because it is a very big issue, is that Bob Mueller is supposed to testify on, I believe, the 17th of this month to a joint session of the of two House committees. And apparently, this is what Devin Nunes says. He says, now what's off about this? Supposedly he's only agreed to testify for 4 hours. 4 hours with the House Intelligence Committee and the House Judiciary Committee is not enough time to get everyone's questions in. So I'll say something about that. I have listened, typically at work, and you know, these are days when I can find the time at work. So I've listened to entire committee hearings. And sometimes for one committee, it'll take 4 to 5 hours. And yeah, they will do a break, but I've had instances where I can't even get up because I want to hear exactly what's going on with all these people, especially the Facebook hearing with Mark Zuckerberg. That was a crazy one. The Michael Cohen hearing was very long. I was like seriously trying to find ways to get away for a few minutes, but it didn't work. So this hearing is going to be another attempt by the Democratic majority in the House to try to keep alive this notion that Donald Trump is a corrupt president, B, that he's committing crimes that are impeachable, and C, that the Mueller report includes inferences that provide the basis for impeaching Donald Trump. And unfortunately, according to Nunes, what they're going to do is try to limit the time for lower committee members. So you're gonna see, obviously you're gonna see people like, I believe Schiff is on the Judiciary Committee, if I'm not mistaken, but the chair of the Judiciary Committee, no, he's the chair of He's the chair of the House Intelligence Committee. The chair of the Judiciary Committee is Jerry Nadler. And those two are two of the biggest Russiagators. There's also Eric Swalwell, who's on the Intelligence Committee. So if you're one of these people who believes that Russia hacked the election and you have the brain of a sweet potato, I guess you might be entertained that day. But the reality is that why would they limit the time to 4 hours? Or why is it that maybe Mueller would not want to testify for more than 4 hours? You see, the GOP has its own gang of people who are, I would say, the Russiagate, the skeptic community. if you guys remember on YouTube, there used to be what was called the skeptic community. They were mainly these atheists who were against the political correctness movement, and eventually I think the skeptic community kind of fell apart, largely due to other political differences between them. But the skeptic community in the Republican Party is led by Mark Meadows of North Carolina in the House. Okay, I'm talking about in the House, not in the Senate. In the Senate, you'd probably put in people like Rand Paul and Lindsey Graham, who don't necessarily get along at all, but they're both against the Russiagate conspiracy. So in the House, you have Mark Meadows, who I would say is the leader, and then his second in command would probably be Jim Jordan, who's from Ohio, more central Ohio. not really where I live. You also have Louis Gohmert from Texas, and a couple other people. Matt Gaetz from Florida would be a good example. And I wouldn't say that there's a ton of Republicans who are Russiagators. You do have, of course, Justin Amash, who has publicly stated, well, I think there is something in the Mueller report that's impeachable. So it says Mueller, who made clear in a public statement late last month he did not want to testify about his now complete investigation, agreed to public testimony before the House Intelligence and Judiciary Committees on July 17th in response to a pair of subpoenas. In an interview with CNN last week, House Intelligence Chairman Adam Schiff said he did not believe the special counsel's office considered what it received to be a friendly subpoena and that Mueller was deeply reluctant to comply with it. As part of the plan, Schiff said that there will also be an executive session with members of Mueller's staff. So that's what's going on. Mueller does not really want to testify, but he's been compelled to. But he's agreed to only 4 hours. So the House can force him to testify, but they don't necessarily have the power to force him to be there for the entire day. He can say, look, I'll say as much as I want, and you can't just make me stay here the whole time. So he can, by doing this, he complies with the subpoena, but he doesn't necessarily, get cornered into staying there the whole day. There has been some speculation about what this closed-door discussion might entail. Former FBI Deputy Director Andrew McCabe told MSNBC that Mueller's senior staffers will likely go much deeper into the details of the Russia investigation. Joe DeGeneva, former U.S. Attorney for the District of Columbia, predicted on Fox Business last week that Weissman, not Mueller, could do real damage to President Trump. Weissman is Andrew Weissman, who is a former prosecutor. He was the prosecutor during the Enron case, I think it was related to Enron. It was there was a federal case against Enron's accounting firm, Arthur Andersen, and apparently Weissman bungled it so badly that Arthur Andersen had the verdict reversed or whatever, and eventually that was vacated. Well, whatever. So Andrew Weissman is the hardcore anti-Trump second in command that was Bob Mueller's wingman, basically, and he's set to testify before that committee. Weissman, who recently scored a book deal, was known as Mueller's pit bull, according to Michael Wolff's Siege. Mike Weissman led the initiative to draft a 3-count obstruction of justice indictment against Trump, which Mueller's spokesman denied existed. So this is what's so funny. If we see a division between Mueller and his team of people, we're going to see a real, this Russiagate stuff could get even weirder than it's already been. So to clarify, it's already been admitted through the Mueller report that there was no collusion, not just by Donald Trump, but by any American citizen. So whether it was a Republican, whether it was a Trump campaign person, whether it was Roger Stone, who was technically he was helping Trump but wasn't really affiliated with the campaign, there was no collusion between any American and the Russian government to conspire to tip the election to Donald Trump or otherwise. So there is no basis for that case. What they're quibbling about now is whether there were other acts that would constitute obstruction of justice that were peripheral or I guess in parallel to the whole Mueller probe. Mueller's report, released in April with redactions, shows his team was not able to establish criminal conspiracy between the Russian government and the Trump campaign, but left open the question of possible obstruction of justice. The report laid out 10 instances in which Trump might have obstructed justice, but Mueller declined to make a determination on the matter, citing a Justice Department guideline that sitting presidents cannot be indicted. Although Trump and his allies say the case is closed, Democrats argue Mueller's refusal to clear Trump on obstruction provides them a roadmap to continue to investigate and possibly seek impeachment. So that's what's so funny. The report essentially admits that, look, we don't have really what to pursue him on with regards to the whole reason that this whole thing was opened up, which was to determine whether Donald Trump colluded with Russia during the election. But it now lets us go and gives us, I guess, a new porthole to the future. I don't know if you guys remember Stargate, where you could. I think it was a pretty dumb movie, but it was a funny concept where Kurt Russell could basically teleport to a different planet through this Stargate in the middle of the solar system or something. I don't remember. If you guys are a fan of that movie, I'm sorry, I don't remember all the details. It's been too long. So what they're saying is, look, we have this portal that can transport us to this whole new avenue of investigation. What that really means is that they're just looking for an excuse to continue to pursue Donald Trump for anything. And if you ask many Democrats, they find that to be justifiable. They will say, look, what are we supposed to do? We're supposed to just lay down and take it from him. Now, look, if you grew up in the 90s, like I did, and you remember that day by day you would see Ken Starr exiting a vehicle and going into, usually, I don't remember, it was probably Congress, and talking to committee members and things like that. You remember that one of the reasons that President Clinton was deemed to be so successful was that despite the pressure of the Starr investigation and Whitewater and everything, he was able to accomplish a number of very, very difficult maneuvers. He got the Oslo Peace Accords signed. Okay, I'm not saying you have to agree with everything he did, but he did do that. He got the Dayton Accord signed between the Bosnian factions, the Serbs, the Bosniaks, and the Croats. He got the Good Friday Accord signed, and the Good Friday Accord was during the height of all the craziness with Monica Lewinsky and everything. So those are three major international peace initiatives that Bill Clinton was able to accomplish. Whether you think that they're accomplishments or not, they were at the time considered major foreign policy breakthroughs. Other things that he was able to do was to pass the welfare to work reform and a number of other domestic policy reforms that were part of what people call the triangulation strategy, where he was working with Trent Lott of the Republican Party in order to he essentially gave the Republicans so many of their domestic policy goals that many would say jokingly that Bill Clinton was one of the greatest Republican presidents ever. So this whole idea that you can just destroy Donald Trump through committee hearings and through airing out his dirty laundry, it's already a strategy that failed under President Clinton. And it's not to say that Clinton was clean. I would be the last person to say that. There is ample evidence that there was financial misdeeds that Hillary Clinton was involved in Whitewater. It's just that it stretched out for so long that at a certain point people stopped caring. Attorney General William Barr said he and former Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein determined there was not sufficient evidence to establish a crime had occurred. Despite Mueller being out of the job and his reluctance to testify, Nunes complained of the former special counsel's continual presence. He's like a bad penny. He just won't go away. I haven't heard that in a while. The bad penny analogy. Nunes said a question he wants to ask Mueller is how far the counterintelligence investigation into Trump's campaign goes, even as the FBI asserts it started in July 2016. That is a total lie. They've been lying to Congress. They've been misleading the American people. And I'm going to ask that question, or at least me or somebody on my committee is going to ask that question of Bob Mueller when the investigation actually began spying on the Trump campaign. So there's a number of strategies the GOP could take to make it a more effective hearing. Obviously, the Democrats are looking for their own goals in that, which is understandable. The best approach would be what they did during the Kavanaugh hearings. And it's a little different. So in the Kavanaugh hearings, they hired an external counsel that would pose the questions to Christine Blasey Ford. In this case, okay, and this is important, they don't need an external investigator. They have one of the people. It would be either Mark Meadows or Jim Jordan or Matt Gaetz or Gohmert I think the best person would be Jordan, but really all four of them have their own advantages, and they would be essentially every time the committee pops over to a Republican, because they have to alternate one for one, at least until they run out of Republicans, because there are more Democrats. They can defer and yield their time to another Republican. So you would have a continuous stream where you'd have either Jordan or Meadows just say, well, look, continuing my previous my previous questioning, how about this? Will you explain that? And then you get a more coherent stream of argument. That's something that I think that they would be able to do. Obviously, in some cases, I think Matt Gaetz, for example, would probably insist on asking his questions. I don't think that it has to be done that way. I think that it's really something that they should get together and coordinate on. And that's something that's all fair. The problem is sometimes when you have witnesses coordinating with committee members. During the Cohen committee hearing, which was with Nadler chairing the Judiciary Committee, it was revealed that Michael Cohen had coordinated with Adam Schiff. Okay, and that shows that he's plainly having a partisan interest in what's going on. Another thing that's possible thing to ask about. You have Alan Dershowitz talking about why did the Mueller team distort the Trump attorney voicemail. So this was, you might remember, it was from the beginning of this month with John Dowd, who was one of the president's attorneys. He left a voicemail for one of Michael Flynn's attorneys. And it says here, the report says attorney John Dowd reached out to Robert Kellner, a lawyer for Michael Flynn, after Flynn withdrew from a joint defense agreement with the Trump legal team and asked Kellner to give him a heads up. The report characterized the voicemail as an attempt by an attorney of the president to obstruct the cooperation of Flynn with the Mueller investigation. That is also how much of the press covered it. According to the Mueller report, on November 22nd, 2017, after Flynn had already withdrawn from the joint defense agreement he had with the president, Dowd left a voicemail for Kellner that said, I understand your situation, but let me see if I can state in starker terms. It wouldn't surprise me if you've gone on to make a deal with the government. If there's information that implicates the president, then we've got a national security issue. We need some kind of heads up, just for the sake of protecting all our interests if we can. Remember what we've always said about the president and his feelings towards Flynn. That still remains. The very next day, Flynn's attorneys returned the call from the president's personal counsel to acknowledge receipt of the voicemail. And they stated that they were no longer in a position to share information under any sort of privilege. According to Flynn's attorneys, the president's personal counsel was indignant and vocal in his disagreement. The president's personal counsel said that he interpreted what they said to him as a reflection of Flynn's hostility toward the president, and that he planned to inform his client of that interpretation. Only after Judge Emmett Sullivan ordered the government to release a full transcript of the voicemail did it become clear that the Mueller report mischaracterized it. The full message said, hey, Rob, this is John again. Maybe I'm sympathetic. I understand your situation, but let me see if I can't state it in starker terms. If you have, and it wouldn't surprise me if you've gone on to make a deal with and work with the government, I understand that you can't join the joint defense. So that's one thing. It continued, if on the other hand there's information that implicates the president, then we've got a national security issue. I don't know, some issue we've got to deal with, not only for the president, but for the country. Then we need some kind of heads up just for the sake of protecting all of our interests, if we can, without you having to give up any confidential information. And if it's the former, then remember that we've always said what we've always said about the president and his feelings towards Flynn. That still remains. But, well, in any event, let me know. And I appreciate your listening and taking the time. Thanks, pal. The edited words released by the special counsel omits the following important words. I'm sympathetic. I understand you can't join the joint defense, so that's one thing. If, on the other hand, we've got national security issues, so it's omitting context. So, yes, you could argue that part of this is in order to cover Trump's ass. But if we're talking about an illegal sense, the Trump defense team was trying to figure out if Flynn would be talking about something that would compromise national security. The Justice Department claims that the full transcript of the voicemail is consistent with the overall incident. Dowd disagrees, pointing out that by taking out half my words, they changed the tenor and the contents of his conversation with Kellner. He notes the irony of Mueller, who kept indicting and prosecuting people for process crimes, but then later committed a false statement in his own report. So the issue is, and look, I'm not going to go through this whole article. It is a Dershowitz article. I'm not crazy about Alan Dershowitz on a personal level, but I think he often brings up very important issues where we're talking about legal problems. When you present something in a legal setting and you tamper with the evidence, let's say you tamper with evidence, remember, a lot of people talk about how cops plant evidence. They'll put people's DNA on certain things, and that's something that they claim that cops do. They have to then look at it and figure out if the cop is credible when they deny that that's what happened. In this case, you actually have proof that Bob Mueller did omit context from that call. So I think it's going to be interesting. I think that if either Jordan or Meadows can corner him on that and get him to maybe shift the blame or something to part of his team, or make some sort of pathetic attempt to dissemble and deny or say, well, I'm not really going to talk about how we came about the report or anything, that would undermine even further confidence in Bob Mueller. Another thing people have to remember, too, is that Bob Mueller is going through a period where he was, for many, many months, the great hope of even you could call him the great white hope if you want, but he was the golden child of the Democrats. They were saying, oh, it's Mueller time. He's going to indict Trump. He's going to, the impeachment now, blah, blah, blah. It failed. And then the failure of him to come and give them the clear arrow pointing at Trump, that enraged a lot of them. And many of them started to say, well, he's covering for Trump and everything. So we could actually see the Democrats come out and denounce Mueller and start to pressure him or ask him, how come you didn't give us what we wanted, and things like that. This, I think, is going to turn into, if they're not careful, a disaster for the Democrats. They could do some damage control. I don't entirely understand the approach of doing this, but that's about it. Let me know what you think. Again, probably I think at 2 p.m. today, we're going to have a live stream with memes of destruction. Please like, share, and subscribe. Also subscribe to me on Minds, BitChute, and donate on Subscribestar. My screen names on all of those are Chef Leopard. Also on Gab.com, it's at Starscream85 on there. And on Parler, that's at Razor Ray, and I'll talk to you later.